You might think a single dime is just a tiny coin with little value, but these top 3 one-dime coins are secretly some of the most useful and powerful coins any collector or everyday person can own. From unlocking hidden rare collector value to being perfect for trades, investments, or completing your ultimate coin collection, these coins have stories and powers that most people completely overlook. Stick around, because by the end of this video, you'll see why these unassuming dimes could surprise you, shock collectors, and even become the most valuable coins you've ever held in your hand. These top 3 one-dime coins aren't just ordinary change. You'll be amazed at how incredibly useful they are. From secretly holding rare collector value to being perfect for trading, investing, or even completing your ultimate coin collection, these little dimes could make a huge difference you never saw coming, and collectors everywhere are stunned by their hidden power. Welcome to this deep dive into the complete history, background, production, and significance of the 1987 P. Roosevelt dime. In this long-form documentary-style narration, we will explore every aspect of the coin, including its historical roots, minting process, design elements, collectible value, and the broader context of the Roosevelt dime series that this coin belongs to. Sit back and enjoy as we go year by year, decade by decade, and layer by layer into the story behind one of the most commonly seen yet often overlooked pieces of American coinage. We begin with the origins of the Roosevelt dime, which was first introduced in 1946. The United States Mint created this coin to honor President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who passed away in 1945. His leadership through the Great Depression and the Second World War made him one of the most influential presidents in American history. His association with the March of Dimes also made the dime denomination an appropriate tribute. The design featured the portrait of Roosevelt on the obverse created by John R. Sinek, the chief engraver of the U.S. Mint at the time. As we move through the decades, the Roosevelt dime remained one of the most stable and consistent coin designs in U.S. history. In 1965, the silver content was removed from the dime due to rising silver prices, and the nation shifted to a clad composition consisting of copper and nickel. This change affected the entire series, including later years like 1987. Now we arrive at the year 1987. This year saw millions of Roosevelt dimes produced, including the circulation strike at the Philadelphia Mint, marked with the letter P. The 1987 P dime continued the modern clad coinage format with a copper core and a nickel outer layer. Although the coin was common in circulation, its role within the U.S. monetary system remained important, as the dime continued to be a symbol of everyday commerce from vending machines to small transactions. The Philadelphia Mint in 1987 was operating with high efficiency and precision. The equipment was modernized compared to earlier decades, and quality control was strong, which is why most 1987 P dimes show sharp strikes and good detail. However, collectors still look for variations, including off-center strikes, weak strikes, die cracks, and mint errors. These rare errors can increase the value of the coin beyond its face value. During this era, the Roosevelt dime design remained unchanged. The obverse carried the portrait of Roosevelt facing left with the inscriptions, "Liberty in God We Trust," and the date, 1987. The mint mark P was placed just above the date. The reverse showcased the torch symbolizing liberty, flanked by an olive branch representing peace and an oak branch representing strength and independence. These symbols together expressed the core American values that Roosevelt himself represented. In the broader context of 1987, American coinage, this was a year of economic stability and steady mint production. No major national coinage redesigns occurred, and the Roosevelt dime continued to circulate widely without any interruption. For collectors, the 1987 P dime represents a typical late 20th century clad coin, but still holds interest for those building complete year and mint mark sets. As we continue this journey, we explore the production numbers. The Philadelphia Mint struck hundreds of millions of these dimes, making them very accessible today. Because of their high mintage, they are generally considered common, but finding them in high-grade mint state conditions, especially MS67 or higher, can still be challenging. High-end graded examples can sell for premium prices. We also explore the role of the dime in American culture. Even though small in size, the dime has played a huge part in fundraising, charity, pocket change history, and national identity. From being used in telephones and pay stations to representing frugal savings, the dime has been symbolic beyond its 10-cent value. Now we take a closer look at the evolution of the design. John Sinek's original portrait of Roosevelt was meant to be realistic and respectful, capturing the strength and calmness of the president. It has remained one of the longest-running unchanged designs in circulation. This means the 1987 P dime carries the same historic artistic style established more than 40 years earlier. As we extend our deep historical narration, we also look at collector interest. While many people overlook modern-clad dimes, coin enthusiasts appreciate them for the challenge of finding high-quality strikes, the search for errors, and the satisfaction of completing long-date runs from 1946 to the present. The 1987 P dime fits right into this timeline as a stable and essential component. In the final portion of the style narration, we reflect on the legacy of the Roosevelt dime. The 1987 P dime is part of a series that honors leadership, courage, and national unity. It reminds us of the story of American progress, the transition from silver to clad coinage, and the ongoing purpose of small denomination coins in society. Thank you for joining this long and detailed exploration of the 1987 P Roosevelt dime. This journey helps us appreciate how even the most common coins carry deep history, important symbolism, and a fascinating connection to the past. As we continue expanding the historical journey of the 1987 P Roosevelt dime, we go deeper into the social, economic, and political environment of the United States during this period to better understand the role and presence of this coin in everyday American life. The year 1987 was marked by a mixture of technological progress, financial shifts, and a steadily modernizing society. The dime, although small in size, played an important role in the monetary landscape of the time. The U.S. Mint was committed to producing reliable, durable, and high-quality circulating coinage that could withstand years of use in the national economy. The 1987 P dime reflects this commitment with its durable copper-nickel-clad composition, a material that had proven effective since its adoption in the mid-1960s. To understand the place of the 1987 P dime within the broader Roosevelt series, it helps to revisit the legacy of President Franklin D. Roosevelt. Roosevelt was one of the most influential leaders of the 20th century, guiding the nation through the Great Depression with his New Deal policies and then through the trials of the Second World War. His strong leadership and steady optimism earned him deep respect among the American people, and this admiration carried forward even decades after his passing. The decision to honor him on the dime was not only symbolic but deeply meaningful, because Roosevelt himself supported the March of Dimes, a national initiative aimed at combating polio, which was a major health challenge of his time. By 1987, the Roosevelt dime had already been in circulation for more than 40 years and had become one of the most familiar coins in American pockets and cash drawers. The design created by John R. Sinek remained unchanged, preserving the portrait and the symbolic imagery on the reverse side. This consistency across generations created a sense of stability in U.S. currency and made the 1987 P dime part of a long, unbroken tradition. The Philadelphia Mint had evolved a great deal by the late 1980s. Its production machinery had become more advanced, allowing for faster striking rates and more uniform quality. The Mint was producing billions of coins across all denominations, and the Roosevelt dime was one of the most frequently minted pieces due to constant demand. The 1987 P dime was struck in high numbers, ensuring that it would be plentiful in circulation, but at the same time, Each coin carried the fine details that collectors appreciate, such as the sharpness of the torch, the olive branch, the oak wreath, and Roosevelt's profile. Since the mintage was high, most of these coins entered circulation quickly and performed their function in daily transactions. Dimes were used for parking meters, vending machines, arcade games, and various small services that relied heavily on coin payments in the late 1980s. The 1987 P dime therefore became part of everyday activity across the nation, contributing to the flow of commerce and fulfilling the practical needs of millions of people. Collectors began to study the fine details of the 1987 P dime soon after minting. Although not known for rare varieties, the year still presents interest through subtle differences in die quality. Some dies were used longer than others, causing minor changes in strike sharpness. In some examples, the torch flame is especially bold, while in others the lettering shows slight weakness. These small variations capture the attention of collectors who enjoy studying minting patterns and identifying subtle traits that separate one coin from another. The story of the 1985 Roosevelt dime begins many decades before its actual minting, because the journey of this small American coin is deeply tied to the history of the United States, the evolution of coinage, and the legacy of President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, whose influence reshaped the nation during one of its most difficult eras. To understand the 1985 dime, we must travel back to the origins of the Roosevelt design, which started in 1946, when the United States Mint introduced this new dime to honor President Roosevelt shortly after his death. Roosevelt had led the nation through the Great Depression and World War II, and his leadership made him one of the most influential presidents in American history. The dime was chosen to honor him because of his direct connection with the March of Dimes, a nationwide campaign that raised money to fight polio, the very disease he suffered from. The original design by John R. Sinek featured a portrait of Roosevelt on the obverse and a torch flanked by an olive branch and an oak branch on the reverse, symbolizing liberty, peace, and strength. Over the years, the Roosevelt dime went through changes in composition design and minting techniques, and by the time we reached the year 1985, several important developments had already shaped how the dime was produced. In 1965, due to rising silver prices, the United States Mint removed silver from dimes and other coins, shifting to a clad composition made of copper and nickel. This change greatly affected all Roosevelt dimes from 1965 onward, including those minted in 1985. By 1985, the United States Mint was operating three main facilities that produced circulating coins: the Philadelphia Mint, the Denver Mint, and the San Francisco Mint. However, in 1985, San Francisco produced only proof dimes intended for collectors, which means regular business strike dimes came only from Philadelphia and Denver. During this period, the demand for circulating coinage remained steady and millions of dimes were produced each year. The 1985 Roosevelt dime reflects the economic conditions of the mid-1980s, when the United States was experiencing technological growth shifts in industry and changing consumer habits. Despite these major national developments, the dime itself remained consistent in both design and function, continuing to be an essential piece of American commerce. We can now look into how the 1985 dime was minted and what distinguished it from previous years. At the Philadelphia Mint, 1985 dimes were produced without a mint mark, since Philadelphia did not use the P mint mark on dimes until 1980. And even after that, certain years still followed older practices. Philadelphia's role in producing billions of coins each year meant that 1985 dimes from this facility are widely available and not considered rare. On the other hand, the Denver Mint marked its coins with the D mint mark, and its 1985 dimes also contributed significantly to the national supply. Minting technology in the 1980s had improved greatly compared to earlier decades, resulting in sharper details, more consistent strikes, and longer die life. However, even with improved machinery, Certain die errors and varieties still appeared in 1985, creating interest among collectors. Varieties such as die cracks misaligned, die's weak strikes, and die fatigue can be found in some 1985 dimes, and collectors often search circulation to find these unusual examples. Although not as famous, as major error years like 1969 or 1970, the 1985 dime still presents a range of collectible varieties that enrich its numismatic story. When discussing the historical setting of 1985, it is important to remember that the United States Mint was adapting to new challenges, including increased automation, changing metal prices, and growing demand from both domestic and international markets. The Mint was also working on modernizing its production lines, updating its quality control procedures, and experimenting with improvements in die steel and striking pressure. All of these developments influenced how 1985 dimes were manufactured, contributing to their overall consistency and durability. As we explore the design of the 1985 Roosevelt dime, it is worth noting why the original artwork has remained virtually unchanged since 1946. Unlike other denominations that underwent redesigns such as the penny transitioning from wheat to memorial to shield, or the nickel, changing from the Buffalo design to the Jefferson design, the Roosevelt dime retained its familiar appearance for decades. This stability reflects both the respect for Roosevelt's legacy and the practical fact that the dime's small size makes redesigns more difficult without sacrificing detail. The obverse of the 1985 dime features Roosevelt facing left with the inscriptions "Liberty" and "In God We Trust," along with the date positioned to the lower right. The reverse design of the torch olive, branch and oak branch continues to symbolize the ideals on which the nation was built: liberty, peace, and strength. The balance among these three elements gives the coin a sense of harmony and purpose. Over the decades since the coin's debut, millions of Americans have handled the Roosevelt dime in everyday transactions, from grocery stores to gas stations to school lunches, making it one of the most familiar pieces of U.S. currency. The story behind the 1985 proof dime from San Francisco adds another layer of interest. Proof coins are not meant for circulation, but for collectors. Proof dimes from 1985 were struck multiple times on polished dies, giving them sharp mirrored fields and frosted details. Collectors value these coins for their beauty, craftsmanship, and preservation of the Roosevelt design. Unlike circulating coins, which may experience wear, scratches, and dents, proof coins remain pristine and display the full artistic detail intended by the designer. Moving into more historical context, the mid-1980s were marked by significant events in the United States and around the world. President Ronald Reagan was in office leading policies focused on economic reform, global diplomacy, and defense. In such a time of development and change, the humble dime continued to serve as a stable and essential part of daily life. The 1985 dime witnessed gas prices fluctuating, new technologies emerging, and American industries shifting toward global integration. In this environment, coins remained tangible reminders of national identity and economic activity. The dime's symbolism carried deep meaning in an era of transformation. Another important aspect of the 1985 dime's history is its role in numismatics. Throughout the 1980s, coin collecting grew steadily, with collectors seeking new varieties: mint sets, proof sets, and error coins. Dimes from the 1980s became part of this growing interest as people assembled date and mint mark collections, studied strike differences, and searched for rare errors. As a result, even ordinary 1985 dimes gained a place in the wider hobby. Connecting the 1985 dime to earlier decades also reveals much about American history. The Roosevelt dime was introduced at the end of World War II when the nation was transitioning to peace and rebuilding its economy. The 1985 dime represents a continuation of that post-war legacy, bridging a period of rapid technological advancement, global change, and growing consumer culture. Even though its appearance stayed the same, each decade added new context to the coin's story. The metal composition of the dime in 1985 continued to be copper core with nickel outer layers. The shift away from silver in 1965 had been controversial at the time, but by the 1980s, the clad composition was fully accepted and widely used. The absence of silver means that most 1985 dimes carry face value unless in exceptional condition. However, the combination of history design and minting variations still makes this coin a meaningful part of a collection. Looking deeper at minting numbers shows how large the production runs were in the 1980s. Tens of millions of dimes were struck each year, as the mint ensured there were enough coins circulating to meet national demand. The large mintages of the 1985 dime reflect the expanding economy and the increasing use of cash in everyday life. At the same time, credit cards were growing more popular and new electronic systems were emerging, but coins remained essential for vending machines, payphones, transit systems, and retail purchases. The mid-1980s also saw improvements in coin counting and distribution technology. Banks and armored carriers relied on more accurate equipment to sort and deliver coins nationwide, and the dime played a crucial role in these systems. Its small size, ease of handling, and consistent weight made it ideal for bulk processing, and automated machinery coins, like the 1985 dime, helped shape the nation's financial infrastructure. As we reflect on the art-cultural meaning and minting of the 1985 Roosevelt dime, we see that its story is more than the metal itself. It represents decades of American perseverance, progress, and stability. The Roosevelt design connects generations, reminding us of one of the most influential leaders in U.S. history, while the 1985 minting reflects the economic and industrial landscape of its time. The dime's rich symbolism continues to resonate with collectors, historians, and everyday Americans who use the coin in their daily lives. The 1985 dime serves as a snapshot of the era, capturing the blend of tradition and modernization that defined the decade. It remains not only a piece of currency, but a link to the nation's ongoing story and the legacy of Franklin Delano Roosevelt, whose leadership and vision shaped the modern United States. This continuous connection across decades is what makes the 1985 Roosevelt dime an important part of American numismatic history and a meaningful subject for study presentation and storytelling. The 1975 Roosevelt dime is a fascinating piece of American coinage that carries both historical significance and numismatic interest. The dime was designed by John R. Sinnock and first released in 1946 to honor President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who had passed away in 1945. Roosevelt was widely admired not only as a statesman and leader of the United States during the Great Depression and World War II, but also for his work in founding the March of Dimes to combat polio, which affected millions of Americans, including Roosevelt himself. The obverse of the 1975 Roosevelt dime features a profile portrait of President Roosevelt facing left. The sculpted likeness captures his determined expression and distinguished features and is surrounded by the inscriptions, "Liberty in God," "We Trust," and the date. 1975. The artist's initials, JS, appear subtly at the base of the neck. The reverse of the coin depicts a classic torch flanked by an olive branch and an oak branch. The torch symbolizes liberty, the olive branch peace, and the oak branch strength and independence. Above the torch is the inscription, United States of America, while below it reads, "One dime." The motto, A Pluribus Unum, appears horizontally across the top. The Roosevelt dime is composed of a clad composition consisting of an outer layer of 75% copper and 25% nickel bonded to a pure copper core. This composition was adopted in 1965 following the removal of silver from circulating dimes due to rising silver prices, which made coins more valuable for their metal content than for spending. The 1975 dimes were struck at 3 mints, Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. The Philadelphia coins do not bear a mint mark, while Denver coins carry a D mint mark and San Francisco coins carry an S mint mark. The 1975 issue does not have any major minting errors, but collectors often seek examples with full strike details or proof coins from San Francisco, which have a mirror-like finish and sharper details. Proof coins were part of the regular proof sets and were highly sought after by collectors. The 1970s were a period of continued circulation of Roosevelt dimes alongside other coinage. The design had already become iconic by this time and was familiar to every American. The coins were widely used in everyday transactions, yet they also held appeal for coin collectors due to their historical significance and connection to Roosevelt. The value of a 1975 Roosevelt dime in circulated condition is generally minimal, often worth face value. However, uncirculated or proof examples, especially those with exceptional quality or in original mint packaging, can fetch a higher premium in the numismatic market. Collectors often pay attention to details such as strike quality, luster, and the absence of contact marks when assessing the value of these coins. The Roosevelt dime is part of a long legacy of U.S. coinage that commemorates historical figures and events while remaining in regular circulation. Its design has endured for decades and remains a staple of American coinage. Its production and circulation tell a story of post-war America, the evolving monetary system, and the continued remembrance of a beloved president. In addition to its monetary role, the dime also serves as a reminder of Roosevelt's contributions to public health initiatives. The March of Dimes campaign that Roosevelt inspired continues to impact the fight against polio and other childhood diseases. The 1975 Roosevelt dime is therefore not only a piece of currency but also a small tribute to Roosevelt's enduring legacy. The coin exemplifies mid-20th century American minting practices and reflects the design aesthetics of the period. Its simple yet meaningful design captures the essence of liberty and national pride. Collectors often incorporate 1975 Roosevelt dimes into larger collections that document the evolution of U.S. coinage over time. By examining coins like the 1975 dime, one can gain insight, the cultural and economic context of the era. The 1970s saw a stable yet dynamic economy, and coinage like the Roosevelt dime circulated widely in commerce and everyday life. Coins like this served as a tangible connection to the nation's history and values and continue to captivate collectors today. The story of the 1975 Roosevelt dime becomes even more interesting when we explore the political and economic environment of the mid-1970s, a time when the United States Mint was working to maintain coin production at high levels due to the growing population and increased demand for small denomination coins. The country was experiencing inflation, energy challenges, and transitions in government leadership, and these broader national conditions had an influence on how coinage was viewed and used in everyday life. The dime remained an essential part of daily commerce, especially for vending machines, payphones, parking meters, and small transactions that shaped the daily routines of millions of Americans. The 1975 dime represents a continuation of the clad coinage era that began in 1965 when silver was removed from circulating dimes, quarters, and half dollars. The rising price of silver in the early 1960s forced the government to find a more stable and less expensive metal composition for coins. The copper-nickel-clad structure introduced during this transition proved efficient, durable, and cost-effective, allowing the mint to meet rising demand without relying on precious metals. The 1975 dime therefore reflects the mint's long-term commitment to this modern coinage standard and stands as a typical representative of how American coins evolved away from intrinsic metal value and toward practicality. The production process of the 1975 dime itself reflects the precision and industrial capability of the U.S. Mint. At the Philadelphia and Denver facilities, massive coining presses struck millions of dimes each day. Mint workers prepared copper nickel sheets, rolled them into strips, and punched circular blanks, which were then sent through an upsetting mill to form raised edges. These edges ensured the coins would stack neatly and maintain consistent size essential for machines and counters. Afterward, the blanks were struck between engraved dies which imprinted Roosevelt's portrait on one side and the torch, olive branch, and oak branch on the other. These symbols continued to represent liberty, peace, and strength values that had defined the nation's identity throughout the 20th century. The San Francisco Mint focused primarily on creating proof coins for collectors. Proof dimes from 1975 were carefully struck using polished dies and planchets to achieve a mirror finish and extremely sharp detail. Mint employees handled these coins with precision, ensuring they remained free of scratches and contact marks. The proof sets containing these dimes were sold to collectors and preserved as examples of the highest quality minting craftsmanship of the time. Interestingly, although the 1975 dime itself appears completely ordinary, there is an important chapter in numismatic history related to the missing 1975 no S proof dime, which was accidentally struck without the S mint mark. The absence of a mint mark created one of the most valuable modern dime rarities, although these missing mint mark examples do not exist for the regular circulation strike of 1975. Only a tiny number of no S proof dimes were ever released before the error was discovered, making them incredibly rare and extremely valuable among collectors. This awareness of rare errors from the 1970s has caused many collectors to carefully inspect even regular circulated 1975 dimes, just in case. The 1975 dime also reflects the ongoing legacy of the Roosevelt series. By the mid-1970s, the design had already been in continuous use for nearly 30 years, becoming one of the longest-running coin designs in U.S. history. Roosevelt's image remained unchanged through wars, economic transitions, and political shifts, representing stability and national pride. Even as other denominations underwent redesigns, the dime maintained its classic cynic portrait, which had become instantly recognizable to generations of Americans. The coin's size, weight, and composition remained consistent, ensuring that vending machines and mechanical coin devices throughout the country could continue to operate smoothly without recalibration. Throughout the decade, many coin collectors found themselves expanding their interest in modern coinage, including dimes from the 1970s. Even though these coins did not contain silver, they represented the ongoing evolution of American minting and the changing economy of the nation. Collectors often examine 1975 dimes for strike sharpness, die wear, heavy die polishing, or other small variations that give clues about mint conditions and production methods of the time. In uncirculated condition, the coins display strong luster and detail that reveal the craftsmanship of the minting process.